Hello, everyone. Ahmad is a 10-year-old boy who lives in the village of Sunyaraji, a serene place nestled in a green valley yet adorned with diverse beliefs. Ahmad is known as an extraordinary child. Despite his small stature and innocent face, many adults are often astonished by his wise words and profound perspective. Every morning, Ahmad helps his mother sell bread at the village market. However, there is a habit of Ahmad's that many people don't know about. He enjoys walking to the edge of the village, to a grand old church. Ahmad never enters, but he often sits on a bench in the nearby garden, gazing at the building with curiosity. In that church lives a priest named Father Johannes, an elderly man with a long white beard. Father Johannes is known as a respected figure, but lately he has often been seen deep in thought. The villagers say that he is facing a crisis of faith, something he keeps hidden from his congregation. One morning, as Ahmad sat in the garden, he saw Father Johannes coming out of the church carrying a thick book in his hands. Curious, Ahmad greeted him. "Good morning, uncle. What are you reading?" Father Johannes was surprised to see a young boy speaking to him. However, Ahmad's sincere smile moved him to respond. "This is a book about life," he said briefly, trying to avoid a longer conversation. But Ahmad was no ordinary child. With his innocent voice, he asked, "Does the book contain answers about why we were created?" That simple question struck Johannes like a bolt of lightning. He paused for a moment, then looked at Ahmad with eyes full of curiosity. "You're just a child, but your question sounds like it came from a great thinker. Who taught you to ask such things?" Ahmad smiled and pointed toward the sky. "Allah, the creator of everything. I learned from the Quran, the holy book he revealed to us." Father Johannes appeared stunned. No one had ever spoken to him like that, especially not a small child. His curiosity about this boy began to grow. That day marked the beginning of many subsequent meetings. Ahmad and Father Johannes started spending time together in the garden. Even though they came from different faiths, Ahmad always brought a peaceful aura that made Father Johannes feel at ease. Yet, deep in his heart, Father Johannes felt something unusual, as if the answers he had been searching for were hidden in the simple words of this little boy. Amid their meetings, Ahmad kept a secret intention he didn't reveal to anyone. He felt there was a great mission Allah had entrusted to him, though he didn't yet know what it was. And that mission, though he didn't realize it, had just begun. Several weeks had passed since the first meeting between Ahmad and Father Johannes. Although their conversations initially started as light exchanges, each discussion grew deeper. Father Johannes, who had once only listened to Ahmad's stories about Islam with curiosity, began to feel that something was touching his heart. However, his curiosity mixed with unease. Johannes was a great priest, respected by his congregation. He had devoted his life to the church, but Ahmad's words, those of a small child, felt like a small door opening to a new world he had never explored. One afternoon, in the same garden, Father Johannes asked Ahmad seriously, "Ahmad, if your God is so loving, why do so many people suffer in this world?" Ahmad, who was chewing on a piece of bread, smiled as he wiped his hands clean. "Uncle, just like a father loves his child, Allah tests us to make us stronger. Difficulties are like training for our hearts. If we are patient and trust in Him, He will give us unimaginable rewards." That answer was simple, but it pierced Father Johannes' heart. All this time, he had sought an answer to the same question, but he had never found it in the places where he had always looked. Day by day, Johannes' questions grew. He asked about the Prophet Muhammad, saw about the Quran, and even about how Ahmad could be so certain of the faith he followed. Ahmad, with his honesty and innocence, answered each question without being intimidated by Father Johannes' status. One day, Johannes made a request that surprised Ahmad. Ahmad, may I borrow that holy book, the Quran? I want to read it for myself. Ahmad nodded eagerly. Of course, uncle. The Quran isn't just for me. It's Allah's message for all of humanity. The next day, Ahmad brought a translation of the Quran in the local language and handed it to Johannes with great respect. However, news of Father Johannes reading the Quran began to spread in the village. The church congregation began questioning his actions, while some Muslim villagers saw this as something unusual. "What are you doing, Johannes? You're reading another religion's book?" asked one congregant with a suspicious tone. But Johannes answered calmly, "A seeker of truth must not limit himself. If God wants to speak to me through another way, should I close my ears?" On the other hand, Ahmad began to feel pressure from those around him. Some of his Muslim friends asked, "Why are you spending time with a priest? He won't understand what you're saying." But Ahmad simply smiled. Guidance comes from Allah. If Allah wants something, who can stop it? Amid the turmoil in their hearts and the pressure from their surroundings, Father Johannes read the Quran every night. Verse by verse, it shook him, especially when he read, "Indeed, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest." QSR Raid 28. His restless heart, which had been troubled for years, began to find a peace that was hard to explain. But he knew that the steps he had taken would not be easy. In silence, he asked himself, "Am I brave enough to pursue this truth?" At the same time, Ahmad prayed in his prostration, "O Allah, if you grant me the opportunity to be your light, make me a strong child." But the storm of change was beginning to show on the horizon, and both Ahmad and Johannes knew that their lives would never be the same again. That night, Father Johannes sat alone in his room. The translation of the Quran that Ahmad had given him lay on the table, open to the page he had been reading repeatedly. There is no compulsion in religion. Indeed, the right path has become distinct from the wrong. QS Al-Baqarah 256. The words echoed in his mind. He felt as though he had found something that had been missing from his heart, the freedom to choose the truth without fear or coercion. However, on the other hand, he also knew that this decision would shake his world. In the church, the pressure began to mount. The congregation, which had initially been merely curious, now started to suspect changes in Johannes' behavior. Several church leaders approached him, demanding an explanation. "Johannes, we heard that you've been reading the Muslim holy book. What does this mean? Have you lost your faith?" one leader asked sharply. But Johannes replied calmly, "Faith is not something that dies. It grows. And to grow, I must seek the truth, even if it means looking beyond what I have always known." This answer only deepened their suspicions. Some congregants began whispering that Johannes had strayed. However, despite the pressure, Johannes' heart grew increasingly certain that he must follow the light he had found. On the other hand, Ahmad also faced challenges. The news that he frequently spoke with Father Johannes reached the ears of some at the mosque. A few of them warned Ahmad to stop interacting with the outsider. "Ahmad, you are still a child. Don't be too sure that you can change the heart of someone like him," said one of the elders at the mosque. But Ahmad, with remarkable resolve for his age, responded, "I'm not changing anyone's heart, Grandpa. That is Allah's work. I'm just speaking the truth." Ahmad was undeterred, but he knew the situation was becoming more difficult. He continued to pray that Allah would grant him strength to remain patient. One night, Father Johannes came to visit Ahmad at his home. With a serious expression, he said, "Ahmad, I've been reading this holy book late into the night for weeks. I feel peace, but I also feel fear. If I move forward, I might lose everything. The church, my congregation, and even my dignity." Ahmad looked at Johannes with sparkling eyes. "Uncle, didn't Prophet Ibrahim also leave everything for the sake of Allah? If Allah grants light to someone's heart, He will also give the courage to follow it." Those words struck Johannes like a gentle slap. With tears welling up in his eyes, he said, "Ahmad, I want to be part of this religion, but I don't know how to begin." Ahmad smiled broadly. "Uncle, it's very simple. Just say the Shahada and let Allah guide your next steps." However, news of Johannes' decision leaked to the church congregation. By morning, the church was filled with angry people, demanding an explanation from Johannes. "Johannes, what is all this? Are you really leaving us?" One congregant shouted. Calmly, Johannes stood in front of his congregation, holding the Quran in his hands. He took a deep breath before saying, "I have found the truth in Islam. I know this is difficult for you to accept, but I cannot ignore the light that has touched my heart." His words brought a tense silence. Some congregants left the church angrily, but others stayed, wanting to hear more. Johannes then invited Ahmad to speak to them. With the courage of an extraordinary child, Ahmad stood in front of the congregation. With a soft yet confident voice, he began to speak about Allah, about Tawhid, and about Islam's compassion for all humanity. That night, some of the congregants cried. They began to see Islam in a way they had never imagined before. However, both Ahmad and Johannes knew that this journey was not over. A bigger storm might be coming, but they also knew that the light of truth had begun to shine in the hearts of many. That morning, the news that Pastor Johannes and some of his congregation had begun to embrace Islam spread throughout the village of Sunyaraji. Some greeted the news with curiosity, while others were shaken. Some saw it as a miracle, but many viewed it as a threat. For Pastor Johannes, the next step was not an easy decision. Although he had recited the Shahada in the silence of the night with Ahmad, a new challenge soon arose. The church where he had served for decades now felt like a battlefield, with the congregation divided between acceptance and rejection. Johannes stood before the church congregation for the last time. With courage, he said, "I know what I am about to say may not be understood by you right now, but I must be honest with my heart and with the God who has shown me his way. I have embraced Islam, a religion that teaches about Tawhid, peace, and boundless love." Some of the congregation were shocked, even angry. "You have betrayed us," shouted a man from the back of the room. But amidst the anger, there were also gentle voices asking for further explanation. Ahmad, despite being just a child, stood beside Johannes. With his calm voice and characteristic smile, he began to speak. "Uncle Johannes has not betrayed anyone. He is simply following the truth he has found. And Islam never forces anyone. If you want to know more, we are here to explain." Ahmad's calmness helped ease the tension. Slowly, some of the congregants who were initially angry began to listen. In the weeks that followed, Pastor Johannes and Ahmad held small gatherings in the village park. They spoke to anyone who wanted to hear about Islam. One by one, the hearts of the congregation began to open. Some, especially those close to Johannes, decided to study the Quran. With Johannes and Ahmad's guidance, they eventually recited the Shahada. In a relatively short time, more than half of the church congregation had embraced Islam. However, this decision brought significant consequences. The church, which had long been a place of worship, lost its function. The congregants who had converted to Islam no longer felt it was appropriate to worship there, but they also had no other place to go. Seeing this, Johannes made a big decision. He approached the village leader and said, "I would like to donate this church to become a mosque. This place will no longer just be a house of prayer for us, but a home for anyone who wants to draw closer to Allah." This decision stirred mixed feelings in the village. However, with the support of many, the old church was eventually transformed into a magnificent mosque. Ahmad, who had witnessed this great change, helped choose the name of the mosque, Masjid Cahaya Hidayah, the Mosque of the Light of Guidance. That night, Masjid Cahaya Hidayah was inaugurated. The atmosphere was emotional. Former church members, now Muslims, joined in their first congregational prayer. Pastor Johannes, now called Abdullah Johannes, stood in the front row with tears streaming down his face. Ahmad, despite being just a young boy, was honored to announce the first adhan in the mosque. His soft but passionate voice echoed across the village, carrying the message that Islam is a religion of love, peace, and truth. That day marked a new beginning for the village of Sunyaraji. Masjid Cahaya Hidayah became a symbol of unity, not just for Muslims, but for all the villagers. Ahmad, the little boy with a big heart, remained humble. But in his prayers, he always thanked Allah for making him the path to this extraordinary guidance. And the village, once divided by differing beliefs, now lived in harmony, thanks to the light of a small child and a great pastor who bravely followed the truth.